the Now Morning Show, where we continue to give you information you could utilize. And joining me this morning, the director of the BCRC Caribbean, Jewel Batchisting, is here to give us some insight as we are getting ready for the Basel Convention Regional Center conversation. I say this because when we start talking about Basel, people immediately think of those agreements, environmental conversations, and quite a bit of discussion that has been ongoing. So before we go into what will be discussed at the physical space, give us some insights onto why this was necessary and how important it is that Trinidad has this actual space.
Hi, thanks again and good morning to you and to your viewers. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So I think it's good to start with what is the Basel Convention Regional Center. The BCRC Caribbean is an institution that is an autonomous one based and hosted by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We are based in St. Clair, and the genesis of this was since 1998. And coming out of the Basel Convention, which is a multilateral environmental agreement speaking to the transboundary movement of hazardous waste, the convention itself spoke to the establishment of regional centers based on geographical area, essentially. Right. So Trinidad and Tobago hosts the center for the Caribbean region, which includes 15 countries. And it, of course, includes as far north as Bahamas, and including land-based countries such as Belize, Guyana, and Suriname, as well as 2 Spanish-speaking countries, Dominican Republic and Cuba. Nice. So what we try to do through the auspices of the center is that we try to ensure that the obligations are met under this particular convention, as well as several others, actually.
Let's talk a little bit about those obligations, because we established then the significance. We are basically the hub in the Caribbean, but that means that a lot of different types of conversations need to happen since these are different countries with different needs. Tell me a little bit about those obligations and how we cover the region.
So the center, as I said, the namesake is Basel, but we just recently became recognized as a Stockholm Convention Regional Center, and the Stockholm Convention deals with persistent organic pollutants. These are pollutants that are, as the name says, quite persistent in the environment, and organic meaning their chemistry is quite complex. And these chemicals are far-reaching, essentially. So that particular convention speaks to these persistent organic pollutants, which is the acronym is POPs. But in addition to that, we deal with the Rotterdam Convention, which deals with pesticides and industrial chemicals, as well as the Minamata Convention, which deals specifically with mercury. Now, this may seem nebulous to the public, but of course, waste and chemicals impacts your human health.
Right.
And the obligations under each of these conventions it's numerous, and it requires a lot of reporting to the international bodies, but it allows for transparency and accountability for your actions. So it allows countries, for instance, to do national reports on what is your chemical stores that you have under certain categories. Right. It allows you to report if there were any illegal movements of any hazardous waste, etc.
Beautiful. So in layman's, for the average person, it directly impacts them because, as you say, your human their health is impacted, but also in terms of legislature and legalities that have to be discussed on behalf of said people. These discussions will be carried out in this particular space, yes? The
legislation is important in the wider context of the Caribbean. The challenge has been, of course, is that legislation that was developed does not always consider all of the chemical concerns that we see. And now we are in a position where policies will have to be developed and then impact new legislation or amend current legislation. We're having a meeting next week in Port of Spain, right. And it's the first time that we are hosting this meeting. The meeting, again, internationally, there's something called the Conference of Parties, where all parties that are subscribed to these conventions meet in Geneva in April to May of this year. And as a lead up to that meeting, we have pre-meetings by geographical region. And this is the first time ever since the establishment of the center in 1998 that Trinidad and Tobago has been asked to host this meeting. So we're very proud of that. And it is a watershed moment for us and, of course, the country. So we have 80 participants coming in from 31 different countries, as well as international organizations and observer organizations. So they will have discussions on all of the topics that are to be tabled at the Conference of Parties, of course, to form a regional position in particular. This does not preclude a country, of course, from having their own national position.
Of course.
Yeah?
Now that means that it is ongoing, since you are looking at a regional position, having multiple players or parts of the conversation then. You mentioned before to me that it would have been specially invited guests for these, but general public or the wider Caribbean will be able to participate virtually or receive this answer?
Unfortunately, no, Anchor. Yes, it is for the delegates that are nominated by their country. It's quite complex. It has to go through Foreign Affairs, and even the observers, it's a very fixed list. So, but what we can do in order to share some of the outcomes and probably raise some awareness through the auspices of TTT, shameless plug it's called, to allow us to share more information on this matter, because the waste and chemicals agenda for us is very important, but at the same time too, I don't think the citizenry recognizes the importance of it.
Right. Yeah. Sensitivity is really low, because when you think of waste chemicals, they most times will say, well, the business will deal with the business. So we do need to have that education part of things, and I imagine as there is now an official hub for the region, there will eventually be some sort of rollout. Are there other events or other ways that we can learn from this institution?
Certainly, you can visit our website, www.bcrc-caribbean.org, and on that website, you'll be able to access a lot of information. We have a lot of information on these chemicals of concern, especially the persistent organic pollutants, and even recently, we did a really nice Instagram post on a particular chemical that's in your, on your actual frying pans, etc., your cookware, something that is quite topical right now. And what I would like to say to the public is that the citizenry, the power of the consumer is very important, and having the information is very important. So if you are aware of these chemicals, then your buying power changes the supply and demand curve. If it's not bought, it can't be supplied. Yeah?
And that's important words there. Yeah. But beyond the actual consumer behavior and the layman on the street, out of these meetings, out of these conversations, what will we see next for the BCRC?
Currently, we're executing, in order to implement, so the center is funded through the government of the Trinidad and Tobago, because we're hosted here. But that subvention is not sufficient to ensure that we meet all of our obligations. So the center is very project-driven, and as such, through our project portfolio, we develop projects for the Caribbean region to ensure that they meet their obligations. So a lot of our work focuses on areas such as you indicated, legislation, trying to bring some sort of clarity to the legislative agenda in the region as it relates to chemicals and waste, looking at end-of-life vehicles, looking at electronic waste assessments, essentially, even areas such as polyvinyl chloride, PVC, and even looking at residual stocks of legacy chemicals and how can we get rid of them, to physically get them out of the region. Okay. So this is just an example of some of the work we do, as well as we also do smaller projects like assessing plastic waste in certain countries. For instance, we're doing one currently for Trinidad and Tobago. We've completed assessments of that nature for Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, and Suriname as well. So a lot to come from us. We are always trying to ensure that the countries have environmentally sound management of their chemicals and waste.
Course, an ongoing process that we, the people, will have to help with and be impacted by. Any way that corporate Trinidad and Tobago and the wider region can impact that as well?
Of course, I think globally, we recognize the importance of corporate social responsibility, and there's a lot of discussion around environmental social governance issues, but it's really to take a leadership role. And if corporate Trinidad and Tobago can take that leadership role through small projects, utilizing simple things, making small changes at the organizational level, looking at greener procurement, for instance, achieving sustainability through less printing, as an example, even recycling schemes or having bins available for their staff for the collection of material. All of these are small steps in the right direction.
Beautiful stuff. I think we've basically covered all that I could think of, but are there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with the Citizenry Corporate Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, I think it's good to start this conversation. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to talk about waste and chemicals. As I said, I would love to do maybe additional segments on specific thematic areas and raise that awareness for the citizenry. But I would say to the citizenry to do their part. Every little bit counts, and we just need to make a step in the right direction.
In that case, I thank you for making the time to give us that insight. We look forward to the opportunity to explore that even more.
Yes.
And ahead of those conversations, we do hope that it is a successful endeavor, as we are proudly the hub for quite an important discussion.
Thanks very much for the opportunity again, and yes, I wish I had some pigeon peas ice cream right now.
Me too, girl. Maybe when you come back, because that's definitely not harmful chemicals that we can talk about. Jewel Batchesting, the director of the BCRC Caribbean, giving us some insight into the hub, the developments coming out of it, and what we can expect and support as we go towards a cleaner, greener, healthier Trinidad and Tobago and region.